Welcome to the NFP Podcast, where we explore the empowering world of natural family planning. I'm Amy Smith. Join me and my co-host Emily Appledorn each week. Together, we're here to dive deep into the science, the stories, and the spirituality behind NFP. Every week, we push back against the free love culture and advocate for a culture of responsible love, where intentionality and respect are at the forefront of family planning. Join us as we discuss everything from the practicalities of charting and fertility awareness to the profound impact NFP can have on relationships and communities. Whether you're new to NFP or a seasoned pro, our podcast is your go-to resource for honest conversations, expert insights, and real-life experiences. So grab a friend, settle in, and get ready to be inspired. This is the NFP Podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, everyone.
We are still making our way through the truth and meaning of human sexuality, practical guidelines, guidelines for education within the family. And we are almost wrapping it up here. For those that are following along, we are in the last of the main sections before we hit the conclusion. And I scroll to the top and I have to scroll back down. There we go. Practical guidelines. It's section 7, right? If I have my Roman numerals correct. Okay.
Yes.
The VII. Max is so much better at Roman numerals than I am. So I'll say something. He's like, Mom, it's 10. And I'm like, oh, or 15 or whatever it is. And I'm like, oh, that's right. Yes. It always takes me a second to read him, and he's a lot faster. So
it's cute.
Anyway, yeah. Or it's sad because I'm like almost 40. And he's like
How often do we use them though?
Oh, goodness. It's funny. Okay, so I'm going to get us started. We're going to go about halfway through this section. We'll do the last part of it next week, and then we'll finish up with the conclusion. So we'll be done just before Thanksgiving, and then we'll move into some great topics and interviews that we've had kind of on the back burner for everybody. So, all right, I'll get us started. Practical guidelines. In the context of education in the virtues, parents thus have the task of making themselves the promoters of their children's authentic education for love. Through its very nature, the primary generation of a human life in the procreative act must be followed by the second generation, whereby parents help their child to develop his or her own personality. Therefore, summing up what has been said so far and putting it on a practical level, whatever is set out in the following paragraphs is recommended.
Recommendations for parents and educators. It is recommended that parents be aware of their own educational role and defend and carry out this primary right and duty. It follows that any educative activity related to education for love and carried out by persons outside the family must be subject to the parents' acceptance of it and must be seen not as a substitute, but as a support for their work. In fact, quote-unquote, sex education, which is a basic right and duty of parents, must always be carried out under their attentive guidance, whether at home or in educational centers chosen and controlled by them, end quote. Frequently, parents are not lacking in awareness and effort, but they are quite alone, defenseless, and often made to feel they are wrong. They need understanding, but also support and help by groups, associations, and institutions.
Recommendations for parents. It is recommended that parents associate with other parents, not only in order to protect, maintain, or fill out their own role as the primary educators of their children, especially in the area of education for love, but also to fight against damaging forms of sex education and to ensure that their children will be educated according to Christian principles and in a way that is constant with their personal development.
In the case where parents are helped by others in educating their own children for love, it is recommended that they keep themselves precisely informed on the content and methodology with which such supplementary education is imparted. No one can bind children or young people to secrecy about the content and method of instruction provided outside the family.
We are aware of the difficulty and often impossibility for parents to participate fully in all supplementary instruction provided outside the home. Nevertheless, they have the right to be informed about the structure and content of the program. In all cases, their right to be present during classes cannot be denied.
It is recommended that parents attentively follow every form of sex education that is given to their children outside the home, removing their children whenever this education does not correspond to their own principles. However, such a decision of the parents must not become grounds for discrimination against their children. On the other hand, parents who remove their children from such instruction have the duty to give them an adequate formation appropriate to each child or young person's stage of development.
Recommendations for all educators. Since each child or young person must be able to live his or her own sexuality in conformity with the Christian principles, and hence be able to exercise the virtue of chastity, no educator, not even parents, can interfere with this right to chastity.
It is recommended that respect be given to the right of the child and the young person to be adequately informed by their own parents on moral and sexual questions in a way that complies with his or her desire to be chaste and to be formed in chastity. This right is further qualified by a child's stage of development, his or her capacity to integrate moral truth with sexual information, and by respect for his or her innocence and tranquility.
It is recommended that respect be given to the right of the child or young person to withdraw from any form of sexual instruction imparted outside of the home. Neither the children nor other members of their family should ever be penalized or discriminated against for this decision.
4 working principles and their particular norms. In the light of these recommendations, education for love can take concrete form in 4 working principles.
Human sexuality is a sacred mystery and must be Number 1. Human sexuality is a sacred mystery and must be presented according to the doctrinal and moral teaching of the Church, always bearing in mind the effects of original sin. Informed by Christian reverence and realism, this doctrinal principle must guide every moment of education for love. In an age when the mystery has been taken from human sexuality, parents must take care to avoid trivializing human sexuality in their teaching and in the help offered by others. In particular, profound respect must be maintained for the difference between man and woman, which reflects the love and fruitfulness of God Himself.
At the same time, when teaching Catholic doctrine and morality about sexuality, the lasting effects of original sin must be taken into account. That is to say, human weakness and the need for the grace of God to overcome temptations and avoid sin. In this regard, the conscience of every individual must be formed clearly, precisely, and in accord with spiritual values. But Catholic morality is never limited to teaching about avoiding sin. It also deals with growth in the Christian virtues and developing the capacity for self-giving in the vocation of one's own life.
Number 2, only information proportionate to each phase of their individual development should be presented to children and young people. This principle of timing has already been presented in the study of the various phases of the development of children and young people. Parents and all who help them should be sensitive, A, to the different phases of development, in particular the years of innocence and puberty. B, to the way each child or young person experiences the various stages of life. C, to particular problems associated with these stages.
In the light of this principle, the relevance of timing in relation to specific problems can also be indicated. A. In later adolescence, young people can first be introduced to the knowledge of the signs of fertility and then to the natural regulation of fertility, but only in the context of education for love, fidelity, and marriage, God's plan for procreation, and respect for human life. B. Homosexuality should not be discussed before adolescence unless a specific serious problem has arisen in a particular situation. This subject must be presented only in terms of chastity, health, and the truth about human sexuality in its relationship to the family as taught by the Church. C. Sexual perversions that are relatively rare should not be dealt with except through individual counseling as the parent's response to genuine problems.
Number 3, no material of an erotic nature should be presented to children or young people of any age, individually or in a group. This principle of decency must safeguard the virtue of Christian chastity. Therefore, in passing on sexual formation in the context of education for love, the instruction must always be positive and prudent, and clear and delicate. These 4 words used by the Catholic Church exclude every form of unacceptable content in sexual education. Moreover, even if they are not erotic, graphic, and realistic representations of childbirth, for example, in a film, should be made known gradually, so as not to create fear and negative attitudes towards procreation in girls and young women.
No one should ever be invited, let alone obliged, to act in any way that could objectively offend against modesty or which could subjectively offend against his or her own delicacy or sense of privacy. This principle of respect for the child excludes all improper forms of involving children and young people. In this regard, among other things, this can include the following methods that abuse sex education. A. Every dramatized representation, mime, or role playing which depict genital or erotic matters. B. Making drawings, charts, or models, etc., of this nature. C. Seeking personal information about sexual questions or asking that family information be divulged. D. Oral or written exams about genital or erotic questions.
Particular methods. Parents and all who help them should keep these principles and norms in mind when they take up various methods which seem suitable in the light of parental and expert experience. We will now go on to single out these recommended methods. The main methods to avoid will also be indicated, together with the ideologies that promote and inspire them. Okay, so we're going to stop there. So we'll get to those recommended methods next time. Wow, that was great. Oh my gosh, the 4 working principles, and that could not be more like boom, boom, boom. Like, here are things to watch out for. Here are things you need to include, what to do. I think
So
that the teacher in me, yeah, I love it. I'm like, oh, this is great. It's like an outline, Yeah,
Definitely.
this is really great.
Well, how often do parents desire an outline at this
Right.
stage of life? Like, I didn't know that this was available,
Me
my
neither.
children aren't this age yet, but still, like, you hear from so many moms that just, I'm sure parents, also dads too, but like just talking to moms, like they want to know this stuff. I just don't think that they know it's out there.
Yeah. And I'll put links in the show notes for people that want to seek her out. But I just was thinking of Pearl and Thistle. I mean, she's the one that, mentioned this encyclical when he interviewed her, and all the great programming she offers. I mean, she clearly, knows, she's just so knowledgeable about this content matter, but also the theology aspect. So it seems like she has just put together so many great resources for parents and educators to really hit all these points age appropriately, at the different stages of development, including the appropriate content. And that, one of the things that really stood out to me, and I kind of broke it down, but it's like section 113, section 113, 116, 117, 118, really talking to the importance of the parent, and especially in 116, like the right of the parent to be present during instruction. It's going to be outside of the home on this subject matter. And it's one of the reasons why I think, it's great if there are programs that are just for children that don't involve the parents. I think that, okay, that can be an option, and those can be great programs still, with great content. Parents just have to do, like, as the parent, right, we just have to do our due diligence beforehand to make sure that we're really understanding what's going to be taught, and holding them accountable to that. So after the instruction, making sure that that's what in fact was taught. But I personally just love the parent-child model. I mean, that's why I really like, the Mystical Rose class or programs you can get online that like really encourage the parent to be there, not only for this part of like that they are the responsible person, but I think, Emily, and I know we've talked about this before, like I really enjoy having the parent there because I want these conversations will continue throughout the whole of your child's life with you as they're developing. And you're coming to like a one session, or over 7 weeks. You're coming to 7 weeks of 1 hour sessions. However the period is, it's still not forever. I'm not the forever influence. You are as the parent. And I just think it really affords those types of classes or that type of instruction that incorporates parents It's twofold in nature, right? It's evangelization to the parent, supporting to the parent, empowering the parent with knowledge and resources and information. And then it's also instructing the child, giving them good information too. So yeah, I don't know what you think about that, but I do like that model for this practical reason.
No, I completely agree. It's making me think about, well, one thing I was going to talk about just teaching theology of the body to teens. Um, as we're reading this, the year that this is written is 1995. So what we know is during St. John Paul II's pontificate, he's using his Wednesday audiences to give this information to the world, right? So now, before the internet, so to speak, it does beg the question, like, how accessible was this for parents at that time? I mean, EWTN, I guess, like watching on a Wednesday kind of thing, but without, you know, in real time for parents reading something like this, I don't know how equipped they would have felt with the resources that they had at the time in order to live this out. I'm so grateful that we have all of the information that we have now, 30 years later.
Absolutely.
Um, but so that being said, like in regards to teaching theology of the body, so to speak, so I think about the program that my husband Josh and I had helped out with in the past, like locally with a local parish. And, we let the parents know ahead of time, like, this is the program. And the parents had, full, like, we would send an email ahead of time, like, this is what we're going to go over tonight, like trying to keep the parents involved. But as I'm saying this, well, one thing we found out, I think, not through like a survey per se, but we just got the perspective, so many parents didn't know about this and what was exactly taught. And so we went on to do an adults class to offer that because the parents really did. They were asking, like, we love that you gave this for our kids, but like, where is it for the adults? And I think when you do a parent child, um, setting like you're talking about, I think that is the best case scenario, actually. And I don't think we ever considered doing that. And probably a main reason would have been because of the size of the class and just having the space to do it. But looking back, that I definitely agree. I think that is the best situation because the parents can become educated at the same time, and then these conversations can really continue. Because if the parent is not educated properly in the church, or only going with the formation that they had as a kid but wanting more for their kids, I think that that's so often, then the conversations afterwards, unless the parent is really trying to go deeper with it to understand what they're learning, you're kind of, the conversation can only go so far, right? Or maybe the parent is asking the child, and intrigued by what they know so that they can, maybe the child is kind of educating the parent, so to speak. So I never quite fully understood that whole, the 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 best of the best. I think you're exactly right, is the parent child formation together, the setting together. I think that is.
I think too, I remember maybe it was a year and a half ago now or 2 years. Anyway, I did like a little session one night for moms and their daughters, kind of just going over the basics. And a couple weeks later, one of the moms came up to me after mass and was, expressing some gratitude and sharing how it helped to facilitate conversation. And I said, between her and her daughter, and I said, that's another thing that I really like about the structure of a parent daughter, parent child class, is that it kind of gives the third, you can blame me or you can use me as like the starting point for the conversation. Because sometimes those conversations, despite, how close your relationship is with your kids, some people just don't like to have those conversations. Some people feel uncomfortable, or how do I start it, or what do I do? And in that case, she could say, hey, mom, like Amy had said this. Like, what do you think about this? Or mom could say, hey, do you remember when Amy said this? Like, and bring me into it as like the person to quote unquote, I say to blame or to like help kind of get everything started. And I'm totally fine being that person, because whatever gets the conversation moving and whatever kind of breaks the ice and lets you guys feel comfortable to have this dialogue back and forth is, I think, really important. I think, Emily, you also touch on something that I think about often when it comes to faith formation and parishes I'll hear people very of goodwill, right? Good intention of, well, we see this dearth of catechesis amongst young people. These young people are walking away from the faith. Then we need to offer all this programming for young people, programming for young people. And I'm like, well, and they recognize, in their kind of promotion of this programming for young people, because, well, parents aren't doing it. Parents aren't doing it. I'm like, well, it is their responsibility to do it. So, in the end, you're not the one held accountable because it's the parents that are responsible for this. So if the parents are not doing it, why don't we find out why the parents aren't doing it? Are they not following it themselves? They do not know the fullness of the truth. They are not well catechized. Well, then maybe we should get to the root of the issue. You can still offer child education in catechesis, or maybe we should do more of a family-centered model where we're bringing in family and we're having educational time for the parents. And then we're giving them materials at home to go do and to do catechesis at home and to continue that conversation. Because again, they are the lifelong educators of their children. I think about this too, Emily, when it comes to this is kind of somewhat of a different topic, but I think there's a parallel, which is like public policy. So we were voting on Tuesday here in Virginia and looking at people's platforms and like what it is that they're promoting and policies that they want to implement. And it's so interesting when it comes to policies that affect children and young people, and how certain individuals think that they should have I think, right, a disproportional amount of influence over my child's formation, education, access to resources, etc. Their overall, I guess, kind of cultural formation. But they're not here in the middle of the night when that child wakes up with a fever. Like you want to do all like the quote unquote fun things, but I'm the one, but it's still, I guess I hope this makes sense. Like, it's just ironic that no matter how much the outside wants to help my child, I am still the one that's primarily responsible doing kind of the grunt work, if you will, quote unquote. And nobody else really wants to do that, right? Like, you don't want to come here and change a diaper or be up at 2 a.m. with someone with a fever, or, someone that's throwing up or dealing with a tantrum, but you'll be okay taking them away from me for 8 hours and, telling them certain things that I maybe would disagree with. So anyway, it's a little bit of a ramble, but yeah, I think that role, and that's not to say that parents can't choose something where maybe they're not there all the time for the instruction. They totally can. I have done that before too, because also sometimes you just know your child and it's like, I am not the one to give this message. They're just not going to hear it. Right.
I think that's something to talk about, because I'm sitting here thinking the exact same thing. And even as the child, I'm sitting here thinking, as an adolescent, I didn't want to hear this stuff from my parents. But when you're describing using you as the teacher, as the, kind of and the blame game, so to speak, or as the conversation starter, I have to wonder if I would have felt, if I would have liked that setup. I don't think I would have been opposed to it, especially if my friends and their moms were doing it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but I do think about, yeah, that whole aspect of, as a parent, perhaps, no, I need someone else to give them this information.
Right.
Or as the teen,
Right.
no way, I cannot talk to mom about this,
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think every situation is different. And because of that, we're given the guidelines.
Right.
Okay, so if that's the case, then just make sure that you're on top of what they're learning,
Right.
so that even if it's not talked about a lot in the home, even if you know what's being taught, at least you feel confident, like they're getting good formation, as opposed to, I'm just sending them off to this class. I think they need it, but I don't have a clue what's really going on.
Right. And I think kids aren't stupid, right? They will know if you don't have a clue what's going on.
Yes.
So again, if you're sending them to a class, not because of ignorance, just out of like, you know what, this is great. I want my teen to go to a theology of the body talk. Fantastic. But I'm following up with questions. Like, I have these conversations at home. This is like a supplemental thing. This isn't like I have no clue. I want you to have it, so I'm dropping you off. Which I have to say too, if you are that parent, like, that's still admirable. Like, good for you. You recognize the good thing that your child will be getting. But that being said, the child is there, you're not there. So the child knows, obviously, you're in your absence, like you're not hearing the same thing that they're hearing. And unless you tell them and broach the subject, they won't know, oh, mom already knows this stuff or dad already knows this stuff. But when you're in the same room listening to the same speaker, you're both hearing the same things. And that's where we know, like, again, oh, hey, mom, remember when Amy said blah, blah, blah? Or mom to daughter, hey, sweetie, remember when Amy said blah, blah, blah? You guys both have that same instructional thing to pull from to facilitate that conversation. So
I think,
I go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, I was going to say, I've also heard people that do that with books. Like they'll get a good theology of the body book for teens or whatever it is and kind of put it on the table and say, hey, if, I'll give you $20 if you read this and we talk about it. And I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with
My
that. I'm like,
mom did that
if
with
it
her
works, great.
godchildren. My mom did that with her godchildren. And they did it. They did it. And so
Right.
I think whatever, I mean, you do have to know you have to know your kids, know your audience. If it's
For
not your
sure.
kids, like your godchildren. I mean, you know what's important for them and you want that for them. I think the biggest takeaway I feel like that we're, circling back around to is just keep in your home. Don't be afraid to talk about things in your home. Don't be afraid to not know the answer because the answers are out there. We can get the answers. But how humbling and real is it to tell your child, I don't know. Like, I didn't get this education. So I really want to learn this with you. I want to learn this like together. So let me see what I can find. If your child is old enough to, properly search the internet, like maybe you guys both try to see like what are you finding? What am I finding? And then try to figure it out together. But don't just we have enough resources now I really 1995, man, that's hard when I think back. I know how old I was, 10, or I mean, I'm sorry, 12 at the time. Like that's hard at that time. And during living in that was the age that I was at when this was all being taught. And so but we have what we need now. And so we can find it. And just don't be afraid to not know.
Absolutely. And with the not knowing though, not to freeze up, like you said, don't know, but have the thirst for curiosity. Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. Let's look it up. Let's find it because I know it's out there. Answer it with confidence that just because you don't know does not mean there's not an answer. It's the Catholic Church. There is an answer. We don't do stuff for no reason. There is always an answer, always an explanation. We can find something. And to your point, so funny as we were reading this, especially this part, the 4 working principles and their practical norms as it's going through each of these. I really liked number 2. Is it number 2? Yeah. Only information proportionate to each phase of their individual development should be presented to children and young people. And then it just lays it out. Here are things you want to cover at certain ages. Here's things you want to avoid. I like the idea of that principle of decency to safeguard the virtue of Christian chastity. We don't do put a condom on a banana display in the middle of class. I mean, we wouldn't do that anyway because we don't think condoms are appropriate in Catholicism anyway, but just anything of that nature is just not appropriate. Like we don't do that. We don't show images of the body that are perverse in any way. I even like the way that it talked about homosexuality as like, just not an appropriate subject matter, except you're talking in terms of chastity or health. You don't have to go like some of the things I've just heard about in like our culture, that programs that are offered and the explicit details, it's just robbing them of those quote unquote years of innocence, and how we're called to safeguard those. I think again, it can be misinterpreted that in our safeguarding of the years of innocence, we are sheltering or creating prudish people around this topic, when in reality, I mean, I haven't read anything to that effect of this entire encyclical, nor have I ever experienced it myself, actually, in the Catholic Church, anything near prudishness. It's just so pure because we recognize the beauty of the years of innocence, the beauty of the human body. We know that it's made in the image and likeness of God. Like, we have a reverence for this topic. This is not something that's talked about casually or approached in like a casual kind of nonchalant, just, oh, this is just anything, any regular topic, like there's something special and sacred about this conversation. So yeah, I really, really liked that a lot. The very explicit details.
Absolutely. Not to kind of change the subject, but I'm just sitting here thinking a couple of things about things I read, how it talked about I can't remember which section it was, but you can't just say you can't do this. Like you have to say the rest of it, like the why, right? Like it's not enough to say you can't do this. And
I
did
think
you
it's
have
in 123, Emily, because I
okay,
made that same
okay.
note too. To be mindful of the sin and weakness, but you're not just focusing on the no. You're
That's right.
explaining the greater. It's like we talk about that a lot when it comes to chastity. Is it's not just a no. It's actually not a no. It's a greater yes. You're saying yes to the good. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
I agree. Yeah.
Another thing I was thinking is if you think about your own formation, like during school, like I'm thinking about my middle school years, and number one, the girls and the boys were never separated at any time when we discussed anything, which looking back, like,
Well, that's kind of surprising.
why not? I went to Catholic schools, K through 12.
Oh, wow.
I don't remember what grade, but I feel like it was like sixth grade. It was in middle school, 6 through 8 at some point. Every class was supposed to, the teacher, I think it was in science. Like we didn't even have, it wasn't in like a religious class. Like it wasn't in our religion class, but we had to watch a video of a baby being born.
No way.
Yes,
Oh my gosh.
and a vaginal birth, okay? Number one, never was a note sent home to the parents like about that this was coming, or that this is what was being done. And I think the only reason as students that we knew that at some point in this year this would happen would be because older kids would say, like you knew it from the older students. The
Okay.
school itself was small, it's not a big school. And so I say all this because there's a line in here that says like don't do anything that gives women a negative reaction to childbirth and fertility, and I'd have to find the exact quote,
Yep.
but all that to say I will never forget that. That is seared in my mind, and to this day, have I ever seen a video like that before in my life? No. And I have kids that were born vaginally. Like I would have been just fine not seeing, but maybe just talking about how a birth happens. But it goes back to this, and it wasn't shown in a grotesque or erotic way. It was just shown to kids that I don't think that was necessary. Um, does that make sense? Like,
Okay, this is so interesting. So this is so interesting that you're bringing this up. I really want to talk about this now. Okay, so she's talking about in section 126. It says, moreover, even if they are not erotic, graphic and realistic representations of childbirth, for example, in a film, should be made known gradually so as not to create fear and negative attitudes towards procreation in girls and young women. So when we read that, I thought, well, what about in boys? Because Max really wants to be at this guy's birth. So I'm going to do a home birth this time. And he is just, ever since we did that ultrasound, when we did the fetal, what it's called, anatomy scan, and he came with me, he just, every day, he wants to touch the baby. Where's his head? What's he doing? He's all these questions. So I'm going to bring him to my next midwife appointment because I don't know the answer to some of these questions. I said, well, I bet Julia will be able to answer them for you. And anyway, he's like, Mommy, I really want to be there. I really want to be there. So this past Saturday, we were at an All Saints party, and there was another mom there who had just had her like fifth or sixth baby. And she comes over to me and she said, Amy, I hear that you're going to be working with Julia to have a home birth. She's like, I just had my little one, like the one that she had on her 6 weeks ago with Julia at home. And I was like, oh, so we got into a great conversation. And this midwife is just, we both really like her a lot. And going through, how was your birth and all the details and everything. And for somehow we got on the topic of, and I said, well, Max really wants to be at the birth. And she said, oh yeah, one of my daughters was there. She really wanted to be there. And I said, yeah, I mean, I don't know what time it'll be. We started talking about like the logistics of that, because you don't know when you're going to go into labor. And, would it be in the middle of the night? I'm not going to wake him up at 2 a.m. if I'm actually in labor, but if in the middle of the day, maybe he could come. Anyway, I'm trying to talk to him about it. I'm like, oh, hey, Max, it's mommy's going to be making noises. Like there's lots of fluid. Anyway, I thought she gave a great approach to it. So she said, and I think maybe she heard this from someone, I don't know, or maybe it was her own idea. She said, what I would do is start watching birth videos with him of animals, of like a cow giving birth and a horse giving birth and other animals, mammals like us who give live birth. Because what you see is the female is making grunting noises, is moving around, is doing kind of what we do as mammals also in birth. And then baby comes out and baby starts nursing. And I was like, that's a great, I was like, oh, yes, like animal. And she said, obviously she's Catholic. She's like, during the time that I'm showing these videos, we're having conversations about how natural this process is, how God created this way for life to come into the world. And then you can find very appropriate videos of women giving birth as well. And she said, and then we transitioned into seeing women give birth. And this is for her daughter. And I think, and her daughter, the way she described it, because she started with animals in that context and then moved into human mammal, right? So mammal to mammal, the girl saw, oh, well, here's a woman making grunting noises and fluids are coming out. And then baby comes out and then baby nurses. Granted, she also is growing up in a family where mommy's having multiple children. Nursing is normal. Having children is normal. Like, I think this also is dependent upon your family culture and the context of like what is healthy and what is just the norm. You know, we talked about that, Emily. Like when I got pregnant with Max, my norm was I was born at home. My younger sister was born at home. My mom was a lactation consultant. So I grew up with like slings everywhere, boobs everywhere, people coming to our house, my mom teaching them how to nurse, us going to people's houses to help them postpartum. Like it was just so normal. I didn't think anything about it other than like
that.
do you know what I mean?
Love it.
So I think that really speaks to it. Now, if it's not something that your child has ever seen, you know, nursing babies, whatever the conversation is, well, then yeah, sitting them in a classroom and showing them a video of a woman having a vaginal birth, that's like a lot and can be very scarring. But anyway, I just thought I loved her idea of the transition from the animal to the human. What do you think?
I think that that's actually really beautiful. And it's gradual, right? Like there's so much conversation that, like, just as you're describing, that's going to be had around the animal. And it takes the pressure off. Perhaps if the, I don't know, but perhaps if the mom or the daughter's interested, but maybe, you know, you don't even know what questions to ask, perhaps. But by seeing that, it opens up so much conversation naturally. And that is all. I feel like what a great topic to be talking around as far as mammals. Like
I know,
originally, it feels so educational, I guess.
yeah, that conversation was such a godsend. I can't even tell you. I just was like, I am so glad we're having this conversation because I just was thinking to just talk to him about it. But now I'm like, even if he's not at the birth, we go to the zoo. We're at, you know, we lived in Colonial Williamsburg and we'd walk around and there'd be like, oh, look, it's a baby sheep. Like, where did the baby sheep come from? Like, you know, the animal stuff is so not offensive at all. It's just natural. It's something normal. They think the little baby animals are cute. Even puppies, right? Puppies come out, they have natural births. So
That's beautiful.
I
would
know.
definitely, and I don't you think by doing that you could gauge your child? If your child is so uncomfortable watching a cow being born or a horse being or kitties and puppies, then you're gonna know real quick, okay, you know what?
We're not
Uh
moving on past this.
yeah, that's a really
Emily, I
great,
didn't even think about that. You're right. Totally.
yeah,
If they're like
yeah.
freaking out over a cow being born, like you are not going to handle mommy having a baby. Like,
Well, and you don't want to
yeah,
like when they see you, if you were to
right,
just go in blind and they're
right,
seeing you looking like you're gonna die, you
right,
look like you're gonna
right.
die, you sound like you're gonna die, like all these things, then there could be such a fear, right? Like such
So
a, I
funny.
mean, talk about
Yes.
doing things that would cause them to like, I can never have kids. You know
To
what
be
like it could
scarred.
go
Yeah.
real bad. It could go real bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So funny. After she was telling me this, I thought, man, I didn't even think to do that with Joey before we had Max because again, he did not grow up in the same world that I grew up in. And the man like walked around me as if I was like some foreign object when I was giving birth to Max. And in his defense, like he had never seen a birth. He'd never been there. And we had gone to birthing classes, but like to actually see the whole process play out,
It's such a good point for men and husbands.
Yeah,
Like,
I was like, gosh, poor guy. I mean, then, with the twins, he was just like a pro. He was right in there with me. And yeah, it was, which is impressive because it was only our second birth. But
that
yeah, I
is a
think that
really
that
good
first
point.
thing, yeah, it can be a shock. Like it's a lot. So anywho, I'm gonna start with the animals and give it a try and we'll see how that kind of unfolds. But anyway, I
Please
just wanted to
keep
bring
us
it up because you brought it
updated.
up. I
Yeah,
will, yeah.
please keep us updated because
Yeah,
I'd
when
love
you
to hear how it goes.
yeah, when you brought that up, I was like, oh yeah, I'd like to share that. So
Yeah.
anyway, I think the last thing I wanted to bring up, oh well, no, I guess you already brought it up too, was
What
just
was
being
it?
aware of the greater yes and not just the no.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's just a way to, make sure we're always having that positive disposition about this topic. There are some really grotesque, weird things happening in our culture right now when it comes to human sexuality and teaching people about human sexuality. And I just think, ever there's more reason why we should feel confident in what we have to offer because it's the truth and it's beautiful and it's not weird, it's not uncomfortable. And I'm gonna do a presentation at our parish in like 2 weeks for girls and their moms. And oh, someone came up to me after mass yesterday, and her daughter wants to her daughter wants to bring her granddaughter, or her, the mom wants to bring her daughter. Anyway, she wants to know like what I'll be talking about a little bit more detail. Like we'll be talking about relationships. And I remember, Emily, I don't know if you ever experienced this, but I remember kind of earlier on when I do these, I would get a little offended, like, oh gosh, like, am I doing something
Like they don't
wrong?
trust you.
Yes, 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 yes. Thanks be to God, not anymore. I was just like, absolutely. Here's my phone number. She can call me because she's just doing her due diligence. She doesn't know me from Adam. Like, no
And
clue.
praise God that they're asking questions, right? And not
Yes.
not walking in blind and having no
Yes.
clue what you're going to say.
For sure. Yeah. And I just don't take offense anymore. Like, if they don't want to come, I tell them what we're talking about. Nope, I don't feel comfortable with that. Okay, totally fine. And oh, where did that was the other thing. Oh, 117. So on that note, okay, fine. You don't have to, I mean, to each his own. Like, if you don't want to do this, you can do something else or you're doing your own thing. In 117, I just like it says, you can remove your child. However, it's not grounds for discrimination again. Oh, well, sorry, that's for the part. You still have to provide adequate instruction. So that's fine. If you're not going to do it with me, just know like okay, you got to do it somehow. So, and I really don't care. Similar to like NFP methods, I don't really care what method you use. I just want you to do something, or to be able to access something. So, same thing with instruction. Fine, don't come to this class. I really don't care about that. Personally, I just care about you feeling confident as a parent and your child being informed appropriately, without, fear-based instruction and having it be holistic and not yeah, just not misinformation, I guess, lack of a better word.
That's a great point because there's no harm in stopping a class with a teacher at all. But at the same time, you don't want to stop because it's uncomfortable for you and your child. Because if you stop, your job is to get this information to them. And just like Amy was saying, I just really go back to that. Like, don't be afraid to use a teacher as the blame person, the person to blame. Like there is
Right.
no problem in that.
Right.
And can be so helpful. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't let fear, direct how all this goes because it's so easy to just shut it down and we're not going to talk about that.
Right.
Like,
I think you can also, before we wrap up here, I think that, and this section talks about, appropriate content, that there is something as appropriate and appropriate content. So I just would pray and hope that, parents will have the courage, that we can have the courage as our guardians of our children and protectors of their innocence to say, like, regardless of what the quote unquote experts say, I don't believe this is not age appropriate for my children. They do not need to be learning this right now. And we're talking about things, but we're not going at this pace. We're doing something different because, again, your child. Some of this is like broadly applied, but a lot of it really is like dependent upon the child, their personality, what questions they're asking and how much information and detail you're going to provide. So, it's good to have all this, but then you also have to kind of keep it, your context, know your audience, right? Like, what is it? What's the frame in which I'm working in, the framework I'm working in order to communicate all of that? So Yeah, don't ever be afraid of a quote unquote expert. You are the expert of your child. So you have the right to say no, regardless of what other people think. And that is hard as a parent. It is so hard as a parent because we're all human like other people and we want to be liked and we don't want to be talked about. And
Especially if their friends are doing it and you're
right.
like, listen, honey, like this just is not, oh, that's hard. That would be really hard.
Joey and I just had that conversation yesterday about because so I've been, I think I've talked to you about this before, Emily, but like, really want the boys to have really good friends. And I shared with Joey yesterday because we were talking about different friends and him playing and having fun and just as the years kind of progress and as, we are aware of certain parents and we have different philosophies about certain things. And okay, so at what point will like this relationship not be able to continue or will it just have to look very different? How will we be prepared for that? And what will that look like? And I just felt so inspired. And I kind of felt a little helpless, like, okay, well, these are the people around us. What do we do? And I told Joey, I was like, it felt like that line in scripture where it says, we don't know how we ought to pray, but the Spirit prays through us. All of a sudden during my quiet time, Emily, I just started saying, St. John Bosco, please pray for my boys, pray for their friendships. And I'm like, I mean, I like St. John Bosco, but he's not like ever really on my radar. And I just felt so grateful. I was like, oh, yes, St. John Bosco, like you formed boys into wonderful men. You are someone who could intercede for my boys, and finding them good friendship. But I just need to be praying about that more. Like I was like, whoa, I have not been praying for that. If that's something I'm really concerned about, I need to be praying for them for that. Like we do with their
Right.
vocations.
Yeah, for holy friendships, right? Like we
Yes,
want them to be
yes,
holy. And
yes.
I
Hmm.
love, if you're not Catholic and you're listening to this, you may not understand fully our relationship with the saints, but it has been said that the saints pick us, right?
Ah,
And so when you're talking about that he just came up for you in your prayer, like that's so typical of them. They want to pray for those that ask them. That's their desire is to pray for us. So don't be afraid to ask them to pray because a lot of times that's what they've done. That's why he popped up. That's because of his time here on earth. Like that's
right.
so beautiful. I
Good
love that.
call, Emily. Yes, you're right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And I don't know why, but yeah, well, there we go. We'll just go with it because he's a great guy to intercede for that. And especially for that topic of friendship, to have fun, to be adventurous and to grow closer to God, that principle of like our true friends want us to become saints.
And can I remind you that you guys are so intentional with the names that you give your boys? And if you sit there and think about the names that you have given your boys, they are such strong names and they are also adventurous. I'm thinking of Versati. I'm thinking of Samson. I'm thinking of Maximilian Kolbe. Like all these, I mean, you just are very just definitely have confidence in their patron saints for their names too. Like they're
That's
definitely praying. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. Yeah, I think that's definitely those are all Joey. Joey has named the boys. So, yeah,
It's
you're right. I
amazing.
think he's definitely been prompted by some of those wonderful men. Do you know Matthew 18:4-7? We can finish with this and then wrap up. It's in section 118. It says, since each child or young person must be able to live his or her own sexuality in conformity with Christian principles, hence be able to exercise the virtue of chastity. No educator, not even parents, can interfere with this right to chastity. And then it cites Matthew 18. I'm going to look it up here.
I'm glad
For
you're thinking to do
what is
this
it?
because
Matthew
4 through
18.
7.
4-7. Excuse me, everyone, as I look this up really quick. Our Protestant people that listen are they're like, oh, it's this, blah, blah, blah. All us
True.
Catholics are like, I
So
don't
true.
know, but I can look it up. Okay, Matthew 18:4-7. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one child in my name receives me. Whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a great millstone hung around his neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea. Woe to the world because of this thing that caused of the things that cause sin. Such things must come, but woe to the one through whom they come. Whew, that is very convicting to not interfere with the right of the child to chastity.
That's so um That's so heavy because when you think about a child and the sins that they're exposed to as children, really it's sexual sins. If that is the case, that a child's being exposed, like I never thought of that scripture in regards, and I'm not saying it's specifically talking about sexual sins, but in regards to what we're reading about, wow, um, that's really strong.
Yeah, the consequence. I mean, woo, there's no cutting it. I mean, that's pretty intense, you know. I think, and we'll just end with like that reminder to pray this month of November for all the souls that have passed. And I think I've told you this before, Emily, maybe not, but a while ago, I just felt very convicted to start to pray for the souls in purgatory that are there because of my bad example. And I was like, when it came out of my mouth one day when we were praying, I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Like, wow. Like, I hope there aren't many, but totally could be, especially in this area of life, you know, and whether it's in modesty and dress or in speech or promoting something that was not, oh gosh, I have a
I
very
can't.
specific memory actually of doing something like that.
Sure.
Oh yeah. So anyway, yeah, to pray for those souls, and to try to amend behavior now, and to take it seriously, you know. Okay,
Definitely.
regardless of what people will think of me, like I have to speak up here because I'm the adult in the room, and you have the right, and the responsibility to safeguard that child and that the virtue of chastity. So
What a beautiful prayer.
I know,
Definitely.
I think so too. Okay, all right, guys. Well, we will see you next week. Happy All Souls Month, I feel like, the whole month of
Yes.
November. And
Yes.
we'll be wrapping this up soon. So I'll see you later, Emily. Bye.
Sounds good. Bye.
That wraps up another episode of the NFP Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found our discussion enlightening and empowering. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Please connect with us by sending us an email with your questions and stories to thenfpshow@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with more insights, tips, and heartfelt conversations about natural family planning. Until then, love responsibly.